Hi everyone, I'm Fred Felden. Thanks for joining me in this AMATIC Teaching Tips video. I've been teaching math in higher ed for over 25 years. In this video, I'll share with you some ideas and best practices on keeping students active and engaged during math class, both on-site and online. I know it can be a challenge. As you stand behind the podium or behind your computer and your microphone, students might seem apathetic or unmotivated, disengaged. So I'm here to help you end that from now on and forever. The first thing you have to keep in mind is that what you do is much less important than what your students do. So your class, your lectures, your explanations don't have to be perfect. You don't have to answer every question. You don't have to cover every minute topic in your textbook or in the course. Think of your job instead as more to motivate and teach students how to be autonomous learners. Okay? Let's get into it. The holy grail of active learning is the less you talk, the more they learn. I'm sorry, but that's the bottom line. What you say, talk about, or what we lecture on, it's immediately forgotten as soon as students walk out the door or log off their computer. I'm sure you've heard the best way to learn something is to explain it to someone else. This social interaction should be a significant part of every class. There is a learning curve. It's not easy to do that. It often results in a struggle trying to locate that fine line between when a productive struggle becomes frustrating for both you and your students. But there is a lot of help out there. Here's a great article, for example. The most basic strategy might be a brief summary, introduce a topic, explain why you're covering it, and then ask a question. Give them a problem to solve. Break students up into groups while you wander around the room or even leave the room. Remove the position of authority. You may have to give them some hints, tips, suggestions. To some students, if necessary, you can send them around the room to help others. Then invite someone at random to share their answer while you watch, listen, encourage, and engage in a whole class discussion to summarize concepts and clear up misunderstandings. I like to look for non-traditional, non-routine, high cognitive questions. Here's some sources. Later on I'll show you more of these low floor, high ceiling questions. Again, don't worry about covering content. That's not your primary job. Content is ubiquitous. There are so many wonderful textbook authors, social media giants, and internet gurus out there. You've seen many of them, I'm sure. Their material is great. Way better than anything you or I could ever come up with, most likely. Research shows there are 8 best practices of teaching. Those are the ones you see on the screen with a star. The more of these you include on a regular basis in your course, the higher your rate of success, retention, and student satisfaction. This isn't new by any means. Piaget, for example, was one of the earliest education theorists to realize the importance of active learning. Another research project I studied asked 1,000 students on the importance of 3 key roles their instructor played in the course. And because of the results you see here, I suggest, therefore, that you target about 25% of your time in class, that's all, that you spend on giving lectures. I know you feel compelled to help students and answer all their questions, but the danger in doing that removes all the cognitive demand from the class. Let students talk it out. Let them open up their thought processes with you and with each other. Encourage them to guess and check, to use trial and error and play around. The traditional instruction and homework can take place outside of class. There are solution manuals, websites, course management systems, homework with interactive help. It's all out there. And then when you get in class or online, then you can engage students in higher order tasks and discussion. Students may resist. They might feel inadequate, but check this out. Any gamers out there? Most students are way smarter than they think they are. I ask them, for example, well, what do you do when you get a new device or you upgrade your phone with a new operating system? You start messing with it, right? Do you make mistakes? Yes. Do you care? No. That's how you learn. Should be the same with learning math. Here's a quick lesson on how to determine the presence of true engagement in your class. It's kind of risky, but invite someone in to map the physical presence and the interactions in your class. This teacher, for example, probably thought their class was very interactive because look at the top. The teacher was standing behind the podium, but they did ask a lot of questions. But only a few students answered. That's what happens, isn't it, when you ask questions to the whole class? So what you need to do is figure out a way to call on students at random. That gives everyone an equal chance to participate. This is how you can read students' minds, really. Literally, it's how you check for understanding. You don't say, any questions? There won't be any. Everyone get this? Yeah, they're going to say. Instead, you need to administer some type of formative assessment. Questions that determine really how well students are learning and how well you're teaching. Remind the students that this is both for your benefit and theirs. So here's a few tips. Invest in some instructional technology. If your school didn't provide it, you should buy your own device, such as a tablet PC with digital ink, digital paper, and internet access. I stopped using the whiteboard probably 15 years ago. I spent a couple $1,000. I bought a tablet PC, and it changed my life. I placed it on the podium, faced the students, opened up a bunch of tabs and windows, the course website, the ebook, my digital paper, projected all on the screen. Right away, I even invite students to the podium to participate and contribute. These notes become a consensus-building activity as we compile them together. The notes are saved and posted to the class website before I leave the room. I find about half the class stop taking notes, and they pay a lot more attention to the material. There are some low-cost options, but nothing beats a real computer for power and flexibility. There's a whole new world of tech tools out there, baby. Learn all you can about them, and teach your students how to use them as well. Screen capture software, for example. Top priority. I use it every day. Anything you or your students can show on the screen can be copied and pasted into your notes or into the body of a discussion board message. Okay, one more thing, by the way. It's crucial to pay attention to the affective domain. That is how students feel, their emotions, their attitude, and their behavior. Research shows that if you share some understanding of their struggles and allow them to discuss it with you and their peers, their effort and performance shoot way up. Rather than bore students with an oversupply of routine homework and quiz questions, as I mentioned earlier, definitely incorporate some non-routine problems. Show how far and wide the scope of math can reach, how fun it can be, and where it applies to the real world. Here's a few examples. They're called low floor, high ceiling problems. Anyone can plug numbers into the empty squares on the left of your screen, for example, but further thought stretches the cognitive demand as they begin to practice with and understand concepts and patterns. I especially love questions with no one correct answer. It's a wonderful opportunity for students to explain their thinking and justify their work. I get my problems and activities from a number of sources. Here's some of my favorites. Can you see all the research and activity that a student would take to answer this question, for example? How fun is that? Calculate the daily growth rate of fingernails in miles per hour. Woo! You may be concerned that these kind of activities cut into your time normally spent covering content and demonstrating mathematical expertise to your students. But remember, teaching is no longer about covering content. Content is everywhere. Your job instead is to highlight, motivate, and summarize, and provide the appropriate environment that motivates them to do the work of learning. Teach students not to be afraid of mistakes. Mistakes are learning opportunities. Stress thinking and problem solving over rote memorization. And provide opportunities for collaboration, discussion, and peer teaching. And to become autonomous learners. You'll be amazed at how much you learn about your students. The ways they do math, the way they solve problems, and the strong relationships you can develop with students in your classes. And your students will teach you things as well, I promise. My role model is Tim Gunn, the mentor in Project Runway. Watch a few episodes of that show and see what he does. He's not a judge, he's a mentor. See the difference. You have to be willing to step aside from the traditional role of professor, right? Instead of being the sage on stage, where your students probably fall asleep and immediately forget everything, you'll enjoy a refreshing and inspirational community of learners, which includes you. Okay, so now we come to the hardest part of the job, and one of the major topics I wanted to cover in this video is teaching math online. There's a learning curve, transitioning your skills from the classroom to remote teaching. Your course management system, your publisher's website, and your own content might be fabulous, but I guarantee you it's not enough. Interaction needs to be the heart of your course. There are two types. We'll talk about asynchronous threaded discussion first. That's the most common. It's often underutilized, unfortunately. The next two slides show some advice I have. Here's one for professors. And the next slide is for students. Feel free to pause the video here for careful reading. But over the years, I've been able to create a sense of community and a level of interaction that comes really, really close to face-to-face classrooms. Not quite. Better tools weren't available until now. State-of-the-art software has now become so engaging, so easy to use. And in the state of California, it's free for everyone at all 115 community colleges. We're really lucky. With microphones and webcams turned on, gallery view, like you see here, can be very close to standing in front of your students in an actual classroom where you can see body language and facial expressions. There may be some pushback initially, but very quickly students and professors end up enjoying it, as I do. At this point in time, I really feel we're able to replicate the collaborative and interactive environment that used to only be possible in face-to-face classes. There are some common frustrations that I hear from many professors when they first try synchronous activities. Don't feel bad if you're experiencing these challenges as well. But let me share with you how I have overcome these problems. First of all, I found that a total time of about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes is max. Divide the webinar into thirds and start with brief greetings, share experiences, ask the students how they're feeling, and include your feelings. Don't ignore this. How are you doing? In just a few minutes, honest, you can create a nice, warm, inviting, and friendly atmosphere, even online. Here's a few prompts that worked for me, nothing fancy, nothing that takes very long either. You can just ask students to type comments into the chat box. You can even take roll that way, require everyone to post a response. Here's a longer list. Check it out. All right, let's move on to the second part of your webinar, and that's the academic content. But remember, you don't have to cover everything. You can't. There's not enough time. You have the expertise and the experience to know exactly which topics students traditionally struggle with. and need help with. And those are the ones you cover in your webinar. You'll have to depend on students doing the hard work of accessing content and instructional material for many long hours each week to round out their instruction. Just remember again, the less you talk, the more they learn. And tell students that during each webinar, you'll be working together in groups, in a collaborative atmosphere, and peer teaching. There's a lot of ways to do this, a lot of ways to make it fun. It also gives you a break from talking. You can't talk the whole time. I often get the students started on an activity, tell them that they can talk to and hear and see each other, and then I leave the office. I leave the room. Come back in a few minutes for a share out. It took me a couple of semesters to become familiar with the breakout group feature, but it is really, really rewarding. As I pop in and out of these small groups, I've been able to interact with and learn about my students just as much as in my on-site classes. Honest, it's been amazing. Soon you'll be finding numerous ways to incorporate rich discussion, active learning, and formative assessment in online classes. We have a unique problem in our discipline, and that's the notation. It's not easy typing math on a keyboard, and the whiteboard feature of Zoom is crappy because everyone's trying to write with their mouse. It looks awful, but I've come up with a low-tech solution. Where's my Sharpie? Here's one. I've come up with a low-tech solution, Sharpie pens. It works great. This is the way they can show their work to you and to each other. Here's a quick, definite integral. Even a low-res webcam works. It's like those individual whiteboards teachers often use in the classroom where they have everybody hold up their work. Here it is, online. Pretty cool, huh? And then finally, at the close of the webinar, you can ask for questions. But don't worry if there aren't any. If you've done your job well, you may have covered all their questions during the webinar. But here's a chance to pause for questions. And if you go over time, ask for permission. It's the polite thing to do. I had the best success by listing my synchronous component in the schedule. So everyone signing up in the class knew in advance that Wednesday nights from 7:30 to 8:30, we'd all be at a computer or a laptop or a cell phone. Here's a recording of a sample webinar. Feel free to check it out. It's not the best, but it's kind of typical of how they went. In conclusion, after a semester or two of a learning curve, having a synchronous component in an online class was the bomb. It greatly increased success and retention to a higher rate than my on-site class. I was amazed. I was very pleased with how effective teaching math online has become, and I'm amazed at the sense of engagement and community and the degree of interaction. It's way more than I ever thought possible. Students at Coastline have long been self-selecting into our online classes at a rate many times higher than our on-site classes. So the word is spreading. Okay? Well, thanks for watching. I hope this helps. Feel free to follow me on social media or contact me at any time. Good luck. Thanks for watching.